Okay, we are continuing with Kedusha and Tahara to the next Mishnah. We are in Mishnah Gimel, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Gimel. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Shlosha she'achlu al shulchan echad ve'lo amru alav divrei Torah, ki'ilu achlu mizivchei meitim. If three people ate together by a table, one table, and they didn't say by that table divrei Torah, it's as if they ate mizivchei meitim, literally from the sacrifice of the dead. The Mefarshim explains referring to Avodah Zarah based on a pasuk in Tehillim, which is actually referring to Baal Pa'or. Shneimar ki kol shulchanot mala'u ki so'a bli makom. Literal translation: all of the tables are filled with vomit and excrement without place. We're going to go back and explain that pasuk in more detail later on. That was the negative side. Aval shlosha she'achlu al shulchan echad ve'amru alav divrei Torah. But if three people sat by a table and they said words of Torah by it, ki'ilu achlu mishulchano shel makom. Then it's as if they were eating from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's own table. Shneimar ve'yidaber elai. Hashem said to me, to Yechezkel, ze hashulchan asher lifnei Hashem. Let's go through this Mishnah and try and get a couple of questions on it, and hopefully through that get some more understanding. So Rabbi Shimon is first saying that there are three people involved here, and we have to understand why it's three. The last Mishnah spoke about two people sitting together for Torah, and now it says three people. Now we're speaking about sitting by a table, but yes, in the Mishnah yesterday there was no table involved. It was just two people sitting together, and that weren't b'neihem divrei Torah. Now in our Mishnah it's saying a similar thing, but instead of two, it's three. And instead of just sitting in between and there's no Torah, here they're sitting by a table and there's no Torah. So we have to understand that as well. Now the next point is the pasuk that it brings. It seems to be a pasuk which needs interpretation. All of their tables, plural, were filled with, it gives two examples of vomit and excrement. And the word bli makom needs explanation. What does bli makom mean? It didn't have a place. What does it mean it didn't have a place? What is this pasuk exactly proving? What's it coming to prove? Then on the positive side, it says, again, it says three people, and it says by a table, and it says it's from the shulchan of the makom, right? So how did they get to the be by HaKadosh Baruch Hu's table? What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu's table represent? And the pasuk that it brings doesn't seem to be talking about eating. Who said that's talking about eating? So let's go. We're going to use, it's a little bit from the Rabbeinu Yonah, it's a little bit from the Chassid Yaivitz. They all say along a similar theme, but the one who says it most beautifully and I would say deeply is the Ruach Chaim, Rav Chaim of Volozhin. So I'm going to use his interpretation that I'm going to read inside, but then I'm going to be drawing on all of those Mefarshim who all say a similar theme here to try and understand what exactly is the sugya of our Mishnah. What exactly are we coming to teach here? This is what the Ruach Chaim says. He quotes Rav Chaim Vital. So the Ruach Chaim was the student of the Vilna Gaon. The Chaim of Volozhin was the student of the Vilna Gaon. And Rav Chaim Vital was the student of the Arizal, who was obviously a couple of hundred years before him. There's a pasuk in next week's parsha, Ki lo al alechem levado yichya adam, ki al kol motza pi Hashem yichya adam. So the pasuk says, not on bread alone does man live, but through the word of mouth does man live. So the Rav Chaim Vital explains this pasuk in the following way. He says, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke, and he said, "V'totzei haaretz desha," every word that Hashem spoke, he said that this animal should be created, and this animal, then two things happened. Number one, something physical happened, and number two, something spiritual happened. And those two things concurrently exist within every physical being. So let's give the example. When Hashem said, "V'totzei haaretz desha," let the earth produce, blossom, grass. So physically the grass started growing, but together with the grass growing, there was the word of Hashem that caused that grass to grow, that keeps that grass existing at every moment. Meaning when we look at grass, we're not looking at something independent that Hashem once made. So for example, if I have here a table, this table was once made by IKEA, someone in IKEA, right? So it was made by them in the past, and I could attribute the table to IKEA, but it's not currently existing in the merit of IKEA. They sold it to me or to someone else, and I got it from someone else, and it's now no longer connected to IKEA. But with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's always the two elements. There's the Gashmius element, V'totzei ha'aretz deshe, which the physical grass grew, but there's also the Devar Hashem, the word of Hashem that is keeping that in existence at every moment. And I'm sure people here are familiar with the statement of Chazal that every blade of grass has an angel upon high saying to it to grow, which is another way of expressing that same idea. That as well as having the physical element of the blade of grass that we see before our eyes, it also has a spiritual component, which is the Hashem saying that he wants that in the world. And in a deep level, that's what's called makom. What does the word makom mean? We know we relate to Hashem as the makom. We say in the Haggadah, we call Hashem the makom. We say when someone is sitting, Shiva hamakom yenachem etchem. There are different times where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is referred to as makom. What does the word makom actually mean? That's what the Nefesh HaChaim goes at length to explain. That makom doesn't mean that Hashem has a place. Right, that would be something physical that was created and now he has a place. That would be like the grass element of it, the physical thing. That's not what it's referring to. But rather it's everything in the world exists through Hashem's willing it into existence. Through Hashem saying that it should exist. That it has a spiritual component enabling it to exist at every moment. And that's the makom of the world. Hashem is the makom of the world. Everything that Hashem wills to exist at every moment, that's existing. That has the right, the ability to exist in this world through HaKadosh Baruch Hu is determining that it has the ability to. And that's the makom. So if you see me right now sitting here in Kerem B'Yavneh, you're seeing a physical person who's speaking, but the only ability that I have to speak now is because I'm being willed into existence by Hashem. Hashem loves me and cares for me, like he does for every one of you and every one of the 7 billion people in the world right now who exist. Hashem is thinking about us and caring about us, and he's giving us the place to exist. He's giving us our existence, and that's called the makom. We are in the makom of Hashem. So my body might physically be on this chair in Kerem B'Yavneh, but the reason that I'm able to exist at this moment is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing me in existence. So really I'm in the place of Hashem. Because my physical element of myself might be here in Kerem B'Yavneh, but the spiritual element of myself, that's willing my whole existence into being, is Hashem. That's called makom. So hold on to that concept of makom, because we're going to come back to it in a moment. So the Ruach Chaim says, that's what that pasuk means in more depth. Lo ala lechem levado yichya ha'adam. Not only on the physical element of the bread does man live. That's the physical element. But rather the pasuk continues, Ki al kol motza pi Hashem. But rather through the word of Hashem, a person has the ability to exist. So if you understand man to be a joining of two beings, he has a physical and a spiritual element, then when you eat your bread, then there's a physical element of the bread that gives your physical body sustenance. And there is also a spiritual element of the bread, which is that Devar Hashem, that the word of Hashem, willing that bread into existence, and that gives your neshama the ability to exist. So when you're eating, you're actually sustaining two elements of yourself, both your physical and your spiritual. And that's what enables the neshama to stay in the body. Why is it the neshama stays in the body when I eat food? What's the connection? I know that my body can keep existing, but why does that mean that my neshama can stay in my body just because my body is still existing? But now through that pasuk, you understand that through eating, you're getting two different elements. You're getting the physical and the spiritual element. Okay. Now, when you sit by a table, and the table here is the mashal for a meal, and you sit by a meal to have a table, then what you're doing is you're actually entering a situation where you are giving yourself a connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You, by eating food, are not only sustaining your body, but based on this understanding of Rav Chaim Vital, you're also sustaining your soul. You're enabling your soul to keep going. But here's the catch. When a person eats, whether his body gets sustenance is dependent on the physical act of eating. But whether his soul gets sustenance depends on his intention. What you have in mind. If your soul is not a part of it, you're not thinking about Hashem when you eat, then your body will get sustenance, but your neshama will move further away from Hashem. Chas v'shalom. Because what happened there was an opportunity to connect to Hashem, and it was rejected. You turned it away. However, if when a person eats, he has the mindset that he recognizes he's doing this as part of his avodas Hashem, then essentially he's still in the base medrash. He's still thinking about, I'm doing this to sustain my soul so that I can continue doing Hashem's will in the world. I recognize this place is the place of Hashem. And by me sitting by the table and eating, I'm able to gain something that I can't gain in the base medrash. When I'm in the base medrash, I'm learning Torah that's only sustaining my soul. That's number one. When I eat food without thinking about Hashem, I only sustain my body. That's number two. But I'm not just the soul and I'm not just the body. I'm the number three. The number three, which is Rav Yitzchak and Yaakov, always the number three represents that place where we join the two extremes. The number three is represented in the table. Because when I sit at the table, I'm doing something which is that point of connection between my body and my soul. I'm continuing to exist in this world, but not only on a physical level, but I'm primarily, it's a test for me. A mealtime is a time of a test. Am I in this world for eating? Am I living in order to eat? Or is my main purpose in this world in order to get the sustenance that I need that I can continue to connect to Hashem? Am I eating according to live? Is my purpose of eating really just to have that connection with Hashem? So look what's happening over here. The word lechem is the same root as the word milchama. Lechem milchama. So when a person eats his bread, lo ala lechem levado yechia adam, he's actually being put to a test. Every mealtime is a test. What is your focus when you come to eat? If you view eating as a natural process, something very natural, you eat and your body gets sustenance and you can continue, then really, this is a little bit harsh, and excuse me for this, but I'm just trying to explain the Mishnah. Really, all you are is a factory of vomiting and excrement. Excuse me. But that's what the Mishnah says. That's the pasuk that it's bringing. All you see is that there's food going in and food coming out. And let's look at that pasuk again that it brings in the negative one. Ki kol shulchanot. Why does it say in plural shulchanot? Because it's referring to abundance of food, eating for the sake of eating, just food for the sake of food. Mala'u ki v'tso'ah. All they are filled with is vomit and excrement. And why? Because the mindset here is a mindset of, let me eat as much as I can just for the flow of the natural body to keep sustaining itself. There's nothing more lofty or elevated through this. Rather, I'm living to eat. I'm eating just a good food. When is my next meal? You finish the one meal and you say, Ma, what's for dinner? What are we going to have next? It's just a mindset of like, what are we going to have next? You think yourself, I'm going to do an activity now. What snack should I bring with me for this activity? Because I can't do the activity for the activity. It's for the sake of the snack that accompanies it. I'm sitting in the base medrash. How many hours till lunch? Okay, I can push through. I'll keep going and eventually we'll get to that lunchtime. Why is it that children, whenever they go somewhere, maybe not just children, they always bring a snack with them, even though they don't need the snack because the eating becomes part of the end goal. People go to theater or movies and they bring with them food. Why? Watch the movie. No, it's about the eating in the theater. The movie's just distracting me, but this is the... that's a bit extreme, I know. But you often find that when friends want to get together, it's over food. Because sometimes food is a way of bonding. And sometimes meeting a friend is an excuse to go to a restaurant. And you just have to see what for you is primary. Some people, they would never say they live to eat. Of course, that's a little extreme or harsh. But when they break it down, what are they focused on when they're eating? It's just a natural process. They haven't thought to elevate it to anywhere higher. Now, you might come and tell me, okay, well, there's nothing wrong with it. That's neutral. But we're going to be harsh again here now. Just please hold out with me. Just quoting words of Chazal. This pasuk is alluding to Baal Pa'or. The source in the Torah we have where it says Zivchei Mesim is in Tehillim, where it's speaking about Baal Pa'or. That's what the Ruach Chaim here quotes. Tehillim Perek Kuf Vav, V'yitzamdu leval Pa'or v'yachlu Zivchei Meitim. Now he asks here the Ruach Chaim, he says, why are we saying Zivchei Meitim? What is that coming to allude to? And a bigger question is, if you know the way that Baal Pa'or behaved, it's a little bit inappropriate for the base medrash, but what they would do was instead of going to the gentleman's room, then they would rather go to their idol and they would excuse themselves. They wouldn't excuse, they would flauntily admit themselves as a way of serving the idol. So there's a story that the Gemara tells. There was once, I think it was a woman, but maybe a man, I think it was a woman who thought that this was a ridiculous, disgusting way of serving the idol. And so she wanted to show how foolish and ridiculous the whole thing was. So instead of excremating in front of the idol, which was their natural way of serving, she went and did it on the head of the idol to show, look what stupid and foolish things you're doing. I'll show you. And they looked at her and they said, wow, we've never realized we could reach such great heights of avoda. Will you be our leader? And she, you're ridiculous. What's with you? And she left them. Or maybe she accepted the thing. I don't remember how the story ended. A crazy idea. What were they thinking? What was that idea? What was that? But if you think of it deeply, food and excrement is a natural order of the world. I eat, my body processes, it comes out, I start the process again. I'm idealizing the natural form of my body as an end goal. I'm idealizing the animalistic side of myself, just like other animals. Making an idol where the whole purpose of the idol is to show that I'm as natural as can be, and in fact, the part of me that I elevate is the negative that comes out. That's a way of one expressing, I can't relate to something higher. There's no Motzeh Pi Hashem in me. Well, when I'm eating, you think there's a godly side. No, let me show you what I can produce. This is my claim to fame. Look what I can produce here. I'll give that to my idol. That's essentially Avodah Zarah. That was the Avodah Zarah of Baal Pa'or. And on a broken down level, I won't go so extreme to Baal Pa'or and accuse anybody here, but on a broken down level, if a person lives to eat, like his main focus in life is the physical, and of course it's not just eating, it could be other physical pleasures as well. It could be his parnasa, his work, where he does it just for that cycle of life of eating and producing, and there's no real end goal. It's a cycle of money and food. Then essentially he's saying there's no higher form of himself. When he went to war and he ate lechem, milchama, he lost the war. He only saw the lechem, but he didn't see the Motzeh Pi Hashem. This Mishnah is coming to teach us there's two extremes. And you as a Jew are faced with this test every time you come to eat. If you come to the table and there's food presented to you and you say, I learn in the base medrash, but now I'm eating. I have my spiritual side over there, that's my number one. And I have my physical side over here in the Chadar Ochel, in my kitchen, that's my number two. And let's leave those two things alone. I have this element of myself, which is my physical self, which I laud. So that's a failure. And that's what the first part of the pasuk says. Shlosha she'achlu, and again, the number three is representing that bonding, where the spiritual and the physical are supposed to connect, where it's not just the spiritual, just the physical, but a separate way, but rather at the meal time, I'm using my meal time to win that battle and connect it back to Hashem. So here, saying Divrei Torah is a way of my representing, and this is the Rabbeinu Yonah says this, it's my way of representing that I'm elevating the physical by dedicating it to Hashem. Now, of course, just to be very practical here for a moment, this is not saying that at the end of the meal, when you finish, you say, oh, we didn't say Devar Torah quickly. Okay, what are we going to say? Mayim achronim chova. It's an obligation to wash my achronim. Now, sometimes people who say that don't even go and do mayim achronim. They just say that phrase in order to have said words of Torah. Mayim achronim chova, very good, now we can bench. No, that was not the intention of Hashem in saying that you should say Divrei Torah at your meal. Rather, he was saying, not that you should technically say a word of Torah at your meal, but you should recognize the Torah in the meal. that's expressed through saying words of Torah, but you should recognize this is Torah as well. You're not an animal. You're not someone who has spiritual needs and separately has physical needs. We have within the physical that we're doing, can dedicate that back to Hashem. In the bread that you eat, there is a physical and a spiritual element. Through this mindset that you have of saying Torah with your food, you'll bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu down into this world. You'll bring Hashem not to the world of angels on the base medrash, but you're relating to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the physical, which is the whole purpose of Jews. Animals are to be physical. Angels are to be spiritual. Man, Jews are to make that bond. Our main test is not the base medrash or the bathroom. Our main test is the meals. The meal time is our test. Are we going to be involved in physical? And it's all about Divrei Torah. We see it as an opportunity to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu as much as we see the base medrash. So when you're in the Chadrocha or sitting with your family, it shouldn't, of course, it's better to say Ma'am Achronim Mechova than not say anything. But it's not just about a technical, we must say a word of Torah that this won't be vomit and excrement on our table. No, rather it should be a natural discussion. That should be the natural mindset that you have. Now, I'm not saying if your family aren't into that, then you should come to the Shabbos table and sneak your book under the table and you ignore your family and just say, I'm serving Hashem now. And that will probably cause more of a disconnect than the learning of Torah. But rather, in a very natural way, engage the conversation and bring it back to things that are God-oriented. It doesn't have to be that you're quoting all of Mishnah's Shabbos over the Shabbos table. There are 24 prokim. You don't have to do all 24 every meal. Maybe you could do 8 a meal and divide it up that you can finish Masechah Shabbos through the 3 meals. If that's too hard for you, then maybe use Melava Malka and do 6 a meal. That's a very good way of doing it. But beyond the technical reading of texts, let it be something which you'll bring out Torah values. Even if you're not reading words of psukim, but just bring out Torah values through the meal. And that way you're connecting the divine to the physical. And that's our goal. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. Ki kol shulchanot mal'ut siya ki v'tzoah b'li makom. Now we can understand the end of the pasuk. Why does it say b'li makom? It's so amazing, the understanding, because we just explained that there's 2 elements of eating. There's the physical sustenance that you get, and there's the makom. There's the connection that you have with Hashem, where Hashem wills you into existence that you get through eating that food. That's your connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Him willing you to existence. There are some people who eat who are bli makom. They're not thinking of that aspect. They're not thinking of the spiritual part that the food is giving them. They're not thinking the role of a Jew is to serve Hashem in the physical. And I have existence here in the merit of my eating and thinking of Hashem. Not a focus. Bli makom. That's avodah zarah. That's what Chazal determine as avodah zarah if a person's bli makom. However, on the positive side, Shlosha, and again the number 3 represents that point of connection with the physical and the spiritual, not 2 separate things. There's 3, where it's the point of connection, which is, by the way, why you only ever see the concept of 3 in Torah as a halacha in Zimun. Right? Usually you only have the number 10. The number 10, if for Kedusha, is by everything else. Suddenly, by food, there's the number 3. Right? You have a zimun. Why 3? Why not only when there's 10? Because the number 3 represents what food represents. It represents that the number 3, that not the one extreme, not the other extreme, but that point of connection, which is essentially also what the bracha of Asher Yatzar is. Asher Yatzar is that point where the physical and the spiritual connect. Aval shlosha she'achlu al shulchan echad ve'amru alav divrei Torah Ki'ilu achlush mishulchano shel makom. I'll answer that question, just give me 1 second. Ki'ilu achlu mishulchano shel makom. Now it's saying that when you eat, you give your table the status of being the table of Hashem. Because the table of Hashem represents the Beis HaMikdash. It represents that place where Kadosh Baruch Hu Shechina came down into the world. And even though we don't have a Beis HaMikdash anymore, where Hashem Shechina is coming down to the table of Klal Yisrael, you, through your eating and your focus, you can bring the Shechina down into your very own table through your mind. If you're focused on being an Eved Hashem, and your eating is to give you sustenance to serve Hashem, that then you become a Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash. You become that serving of Kadosh Baruch Hu. Again, a Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash was involved in physical things. The Kohanim weren't involved in meditations. They were involved in slaughtering meat, tearing apart the flesh, cutting it into pieces, and then walking barefoot through the blood that was soaking on the floor. and then after some of it was burnt, then they would go and eat the rest if it was a korban shlamim. That's not so holy and spiritual, right? You wouldn't associate that with meditation on top of a mountain with an orange robe with your legs in a very uncomfortable position. You would associate that with barbarian acts. But that's the avodas of a Jew. A Jew is not purely spiritual. A Jew is not purely physical. We're that point where it connects. We dafka the Beis Hamikdash, take the most holy place, and we're involved in the most physical acts because our whole goal is to bring Shekhinah into the world, and that we do today on our table when we eat. So we'll finish with that last. Someone just asked a question on the chat. They said, "What about a beis din?" The number 3 on the beis din. So beis din is that same idea. What it essentially is a beis din? A beis din is taking Torah, which is a lofty, disconnected idea, and the beis din's purpose is finding how those spiritual, elevated concepts apply and are relevant in this person's ox, and this person's food, and this person hit that person, and he has to pay damages, and they're bringing that lofty concept Torah down to the most physical place. They're finding a way to connect the ruchni to the spiritual. That's the number 3. The number 3 is where those two worlds exist. So just to take a very, very practical takeaway. There are some people here who are with us now who are about to eat supper. Maybe they're in England. There are some people who are about to have their midnight snack, maybe if they're in Israel. And some people who are about to have lunch or just had lunch if they're in America. Baruch Hashem, the Torah is throughout the world. When you sit down to a meal, as well as the licking lips, delicious syndrome of how I love this food that's presented in front of me. My wife made mincemeat today. It's delicious. And that gave my body strength. But as well as that, and beyond just the bracha that you make on it, if you pause and you think to yourself, I recognize this is giving my body physical pleasure, but Hashem, the only reason I'm eating is for you. The only reason I'm eating is to get sustenance in order to serve you. And then you, with that mindset, say words of Torah at your table. You could have a fixed thing. You could bring a book with you, and you could have one Mishnah and Pirkei Avos that you read every time you have a meal. That's one suggestion, or a halacha sefer, something very short and brief, just to elevate your meal. And that will fulfill it on a technical level. And if you can engage other people in conversation, not while you're eating, of course. I just one more diak, I'll just point out that diak. If you notice, in the last Mishnah, it was in present tense, but this Mishnah is in past tense. Right? The last Mishnah was Shnaim Sheyoshvim, which is present tense. But this Mishnah is past tense, Shlosha Shachlu. So the Meforshim, I saw this in the Medrash Shmuel, the Medaik, why is it in past tense? Just because you're not allowed to speak when you're eating. You're not allowed to speak when you're eating. It's dangerous. So rather, Shlosha Shachlu, they finish the eating and then they get involved in words of Torah. Make your table a base medrash. You have the base medrash where you're just learning, but you have your meal where you're involved in the physical and you're involved in learning too. And if you, especially in your own homes in the future, if you make that the culture, that's the culture of your table. Some people, the culture of their table is Lashon Hara. Some people, the culture of their table is politics, which is the same as Lashon Hara. Some people, they make their culture of their table words of Torah. Not, okay, now you read your page, now you read your page, but just it's a very natural thing. It's a natural thing that people have interesting debates and they have discussions. It's not a formal technical thing. It just becomes an interest in how you speak. Make that your way of life. Make that your discussion at your table. You will then be serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu like a Kohen in the Beis Hamikdash. Ashrechem Yisrael.